This is Six Tackles with Gus, with Matthew Thompson and Gus Gould.
Best time of the week, Six Tackles with Gus time. Looking at round 21 of the competition. We're in the heavyweight rounds now, heading towards the finals. And some great games coming to you on 9 this week. We'll head to the SCG for Thursday footy with the Roosters and Brisbane. And then we got Manly Para. That time-honoured battle over at Brookie. How are you, Gus?
Good, mate. How are you?
I'm good.
Wonderful.
I'm looking forward to these two games, Thursday, Friday, although I said that last week, and we had 7 blokes from Manly not play, and then Nathan Cleary got sent off. So it kind of didn't quite pan out as we may have thought.
Timing is everything.
Isn't it? So we're going to talk about some of the serious issues, but today on the podcast/vodcast, we're going to try to get through as many Ask Gus questions as possible, because the last few weeks it's been very heavy material. Now, we've got, Gus, over 150 questions this week for you. So
Wow.
The producers here have given me the best of them, and they say get through as many as you can, but they've also, I think this is all part of my plan to be the host of the new version of Sale of the Century when it comes out. There's going to be a quick-fire 60-second round. During this round, we'll ask you some of the more prickly questions that will be thrown at Ask Gus. You can answer yes, no, or pass, but you can only pass once. But that's later on in the show. I'm not going to remember those rules.
Is this all in my contract? Did I agree to all this?
You can, if I host Sale of the Century, you can do the board,
Yeah,
the celebrity board.
I think I'm safe.
Elise Platt.
I think I'm safe.
Was it Elise Platt or Elise Pratt? I can't remember.
I had a mate went on Sale of the Century. Is that what they had, carryover champions?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
we
you
used to
told
call
me
him, the
about it.
carryover champion.
Yeah, what did he do again? He took the gamble and come up with
Yeah,
the duck egg.
we went home with a gold pen or something.
He could have won a car. Anyway, heaps of questions. Look at this. It's pages full of them. You're as popular as ever, Gussie boy. Bulldogs are going good.
Or as unpopular, depending on the questions, I suppose.
Got a coach yet? Anything you want to tell us?
No.
You sure? You don't want to tell us anything?
Keep asking.
Can't you give me a scoop? This is your own podcast. This would be the place to do it. Nothing doing.
No scoops. Nothing doing.
All right. A few of the topical issues. Now, this is a strange one. David Clem has been dropped this week for not coming off the field when he was told to, and then giving the trainer a gobful. Now, the latest on this morning is that there's been a revolt from some of the senior players. They want him back in the team.
Right.
What do you reckon? Like, would you be happy if one of your players wanted to stay out there? Would you let them stay out there?
It's normally the case. I don't know how many occasions where it wouldn't be the case that you ask someone to come off the field, particularly a senior player, and he says, no, go away. Certainly wouldn't be the first trainer that's ever been copped a gobful off a player. I can only imagine, well, I don't want to put words in their mouth. I can only imagine there's more to this. It's not just because he didn't come off the field or he had words with a trainer. I mean, that's not uncommon at all. And as much as we're all mates and we're all working for a common cause, you know, when you're in that sort of heat of battle, you will say things onto the football field. You know, you will react each way, and that's just part and parcel of the game, and it's part and parcel of being close as a group. And he's certainly not the first player that said, I'm not coming off, I'm staying here. You know, but there has to be more to it. So, you know, unless they divulge that, or unless someone knows the answer, it's worthless me even trying to speculate.
Seems weird.
But it seems that, you know, being dropped because he didn't come from, you know, I don't. You got to put it in context. You got to tell me what else was happening in the game, or what else was happening around the relationship, or what else had been said at halftime, pre-match, during the week, or whatever was happening. There's something else going on there, and it can't just be that. You know, if in fact you'd taken offence to the fact that he did that, that's a 2 or 3 minute conversation, and grab the trainer, sort it out, you know, and understand how you're feeling. And you know, they were losing the game, and there was obviously a lot of frustration there at the time, but there has to be more to it.
Yeah.
And again, if you're only taking our information through the media, then we're not getting the full story. So it's hard to comment. I don't really want to comment on it.
No, that's fair enough.
One of the funniest things I ever saw on a football field, you're talking about trainers and replacements and trying to get blokes off the field and all that. I was just reminded of that when I read that question there. Back in the day, there was a bloke called Bruce Clark. I don't know if you remember Bruce Clark. He played in the early 80s with the West Magpies. And he was a big man, Bruce. Like big man. Big man. He was massive. And he used to run out of puff a little bit, and there was no interchange in those days.
Yeah, of course.
You just when you went off, you went off. So players were reticent to come off. Players wouldn't come off, and coaches would tell them to stay out there even if they were hurt. You'd play with broken bones just to keep there because there was no replacements. Anyway, we were playing this game at Lidcombe Oval this day, and Bruiser Clark was getting through the second half. It was a bit warm, and Bruiser must have been getting a bit tired, and he come roaring down the sideline to hit one up, and he hit one up, and it was grass and everything in his face and in his mouth, and he got up spitting grass out of his mouth, and you could see he was tired. He put his hands on his knees, and he saw that the coach had sent a replacement out to the sideline, going to replace one of the blokes. And Bruiser turned around to him. Bruiser Clark was his name. He said, "Who are you replacing?" He said, "I'm replacing Tim." He said, "No, bugger him, me." And walked off. So the
He made his own interchange.
He made his own interchange. So the coach had sent a replacement out to replace poor old Timmy. And Bruce said, "No, bugger him, me. I've had enough." And just walked off. So I don't know. That never made the papers.
No, he didn't. He mightn't have got suspended.
No, he never got suspended. Big Bruiser Clark.
And look, it seems weird. Like, I read that. I'm like, then you're not going to drop a bloke for not coming off the field. Does this point to some more issues?
Well, he's not a rookie. He's not a youngster on the way up.
He's an international.
He's an international class footballer. He's a senior player. There is something more to that than just that. That's not. I'm not saying it's right or that you condone it. It's usually sorted after the game anyway. They'll go and shake hands and have a beer and everything's sweet, But you will say things to each other in the heat of battle, or you will say things, to trainers at different things. Trainers will run out with coaches' messages, and players will tell them to get away. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Just let me play, and get on with it. And coaches can be a bit annoying that way, but there is more to this than what's just revealed there. Dropped for not coming off the field and abusing a trainer. It's not an uncommon event.
Is Adam O'Brien trying to put the wind up to senior blokes there? They can't hold their hands up.
I can't answer you. I don't know what this is about. I really don't know because it was speculation last week, and again, you can only go by media reports. Speculation last week that Clemmer was a chance of a mid-season move to the Parramatta Eels, and they were looking for another forward for the back end of the season. And
well, the Knights are the ones that knocked it back.
Yeah, so I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't. There is more to this. That's just not enough information.
Okay.
All right?
What are you saying?
That's like having to put something together and you got no instructions.
And it doesn't seem like the whole story is. But that's what the club has said.
Yeah.
So we're repeating the club line.
Yeah.
Nothing else has really come out.
Well,
what are you seeing there from them? Like they're going horrible.
Yeah. Again, I've said this a number of times this year. They haven't had their best side on the field. I don't think there is any game where they've had their best side on the field.
I don't think they've got too many missing at the moment.
Well, Ponga's missing.
Well, he's a big difference. But like, is he the difference at the moment?
And some others that have come back with injuries. I mean, they're not. Did you expect them to play finals football this year?
Well, no, but I didn't expect them to get absolutely poleaxed every week.
Yeah, well, that can happen when you play the good sides. That's just the way it is. Look, I don't know where they're up to in their development phase. I see some of their junior rep teams and lower grade teams, and there's some good performers in there, and they're, it's not the Newcastle Knights that I remember. It's not the club that I remember. And what happens is when a side starts to go bad, then you get all this pressure and scrutiny and speculation from the outside, and you don't know what that does to people internally. And, if you haven't got that circle of trust, if you haven't got that circle of trust where you can ignore all the noise outside and just deal with the issues that you have to internally, and what happens from the outside or what's said from the outside starts to affect relationships and communication and trust within the organisation, then it just erodes away at you. That's what beats you. That's what beats so many coaches. It's what beats so many clubs. I've said this time and time and time again. Well, look at all the coaches that are losing their jobs or speculate about losing their jobs. It's not the football that actually beats them. It's everything else that goes on with it. So right at the moment, the Newcastle Knights, whatever is happening internally, they need to circle the wagons and ignore the outside noise and get back to trusting and believing each other and looking to play the football that they want to play. And every week the coach has got to go to a press conference and explain exactly what he explained 7 days ago. And 7 days before that, and 7 days before that, and 7 days before that. I think I saw him referred to he said in a press conference, Adam O'Brien some time ago, he said, I feel like this is on loop every week. I've got to come in and say the same thing.
Yeah.
And this week he said a few other things, but I think that's just born out of frustration of being asked the same question, looking at the same score lines, conceding tries exactly the same way, and not feeling as though he's ever got his best team on the field. And I don't know what they've done recruitment-wise for next year. I know they've bought a couple of players, but...
Who have they got for next year? I'm trying to think.
I think Jack Hetherington's going there.
Yeah,
and Adam Elliott's going
Adam
there.
Elliott, yeah. Elliott will help them.
Well, everyone can help them. They can all play. It's just they've got to get that synergy. They've got to get that. You know, we see a few teams struggling at the moment, and others that are making a bit of a comeback, and others that are having improved seasons. Others that are sort of come off the pace a little bit and not performing up to their usual levels. That's what your season brings. You never really know what's going to happen at the start of the year.
Okay.
But the strength of the club will be tested in times like this, and it's more and more tested when you're losing. Then you've got to deal with success. Success erodes away at teams sometimes too.
You'd rather deal with success than failure, though, wouldn't you?
It's a lot more pleasant.
Yeah. They've still got 20,000 there too. Like that's how rock solid the Newcastle fans are.
Newcastle fans are extraordinary. They're wonderful. They really are. But I can concede that at different times during the year they've had nowhere near their top side on the field, and that's hard in this environment, particularly when you're dealing with the good sides the way they are. There is still a wide gap in this competition, and it's got to be fixed. And it can only be fixed by the clubs. It can't be fixed by the game. It can't be fixed by the game making new rules and doing it. It's got to be fixed by the clubs. Yeah. It can only come into the development of talent. And I know COVID's had its effect over the last couple of years, but COVID has exposed the problem. It didn't cause the problem. It exposed the problem of clubs and the game who had not developed and invested enough in development. I'll say that till I'm blue in the face, and I know I'm right. But see what the future brings, eh?
Patrick Carrigan got 4 weeks for a hip drop, which was sent straight to the judiciary. Gee, it was an expensive week, wasn't it? Nathan got 5, Carrigan 4. Where does the hip drop and the cannonball come from? So is this, as a commentator, and you're in the inner sanctum, is this all about the need for the tackler to put the ball carrier on the ground? Is this essentially what they're trying to do?
Well, not so much put them on the ground. The priority here is the speed of the play of the ball. Everything for the last 30 years, rules, adjustments, refereeing, interpretation, coaches influencing the rule books, coaches influencing those that influence the rule books, coaches with the top sides trying to maintain their dominance over coaches with the bottom sides, coaches with the bottom sides trying to get off the bottom, coaches trying to change the rules to suit the sort of side that they have. We've had all this going on for 30 years, and I've written time and time about it. So it's just evolved over a period of time. And there was a moment, I don't know how long ago, Bill Harrigan was still the referee's boss at the time. And it was the first time I saw this third man in around the legs thing. And I remember ringing him the first time I saw it. I think it was Melbourne Storm did it. And it was a very effective method, but I said, you need to nip this in the bud. And he said, oh, why? He said, it's not against the rules. I said, it's against the spirit of the game and what we are. So what's happened with tackle technique? Everything is about the speed of the play of the ball. Don't let anyone tell you any different, all right? There is always action-reaction. So now there are 2 things that you try to prevent when you make a tackle, particularly on a big forward running straight. Let's just look at a big forward hitting it up, running straight, getting set up so they can run a play, all right? So what we need to do is control this tackle, control the speed of this tackle so our defence line gets set so that we can, interpret, react and respond to whatever the opposition does on the next play and we don't concede a try. That's in very, very simple terms, very basic. So when the big bloke runs the ball at you, there are 2 things we want to do. 1, we want to stop him. We don't want him to unload the ball.
Yeah.
And we don't want him to get to the ground quick because as soon as he gets to the ground, the referee's going to tell us to roll away and he can play the ball as quickly as he like. What we don't want him to do is dive to the ground in a half-pie, voluntary tackle so that he can get a quick play of the ball. So the optimum thing is to stop him. Used to be stop him, turn him around, put him on his back facing the other way because that's the slowest for him to get up then and play the ball. You buy a second and a half. That's really important for your defence line and whatever you're doing. This is all very old school stuff. But so they come up with this method. Good blokes, fellas were so big and strong. 1, the rules and the referees and the game itself outlawed the low tackle. They didn't make a statement that's what they're trying to do, but they virtually made the low tackle redundant. The low one-on-one tackle redundant.
Is that because if you take someone's legs away, they can get up quicker?
Yeah, so what happens, there were a few things now with the low tackle. The old thing, when the big bloke comes along, the little bloke comes in, knocks him down, and he hits the ground, all right? Well, as soon as he hits the ground, we want this bloke to roll away, all right? And this bloke can play the ball. What used to happen is he'd come in, another man would come over the top and either slow him down or, so they called that a flop. You couldn't flop on top of him and stop him, Or if I tackled low and he started to fall and I came in over top to lock up the ball so he didn't pass it, right? There was a chance, because he was falling, there was a chance I'd clip him on the chin, and we saw plenty of those. First man in low, second man over the top. That's how we used to tackle. That's how it was tackled forever. First man in low, second man over the top. But the second man over the top would clip him on the chin because he couldn't get the contact point right. He would fall on his front. The fella tackling low ended up getting hurt because they got so big and strong. Most blokes get hurt making tacklers, not getting tackled. I'm trying to rush a whole lot of things in here. So where the old adage, and going back a couple of decades, where it was, first man in low, second man over the top, lock the ball up, slow the play the ball down. They outlawed all that, and they made low tackling redundant. Low tackling just led to giving away penalties, giving away quick play the balls, or causing injuries, or causing suspensions. That's what low tackling did. So they eradicated all that so that you couldn't tackle low anymore. But how do we stop these blooders and then how do we, because they're so big and strong, and stop them from making ground and pushing and shoving and getting more, and they get very adept at what they do too.
So now we're trying to hold the player up.
So what we do now, we don't tackle them, we catch them. So
right.
So it's two. So it's first man on the ball, second man grabs, all right, we hold him up so he can't get to the ground too quick. And then because he's strong and he can push us around, he's still got his legs, third man in underneath, squeeze his legs together. Now we can do whatever we want with him. We can hold him up for as long as we want. We can get a 10-second play the ball if we want to.
It's because the referee's not satisfied the tackle's been made.
Yeah, so what would happen is two men up top, he's pushing, third man around the legs, hold his legs together, and don't put him on the ground until the referee says held.
Yeah.
So the referee would look at it, and say held, and as he says held, then you drop him to the ground.
Yeah.
And then there's another 3 or 4 seconds before he gets up and played the ball. You get 2 defensive line sets, and that's the basic philosophy behind the lot.
So that's where the hip drops come in.
Yeah. So over the space of 2 decades or 3 decades of all of this, tackling has been turned completely upside down. The old adage was first man in low, second man over the top, wrap up the ball, slow the play ball down, let your defence get set. Referee, coaches complained about all that, hold your hand on top of their head, lay on top of them, gang tackle everyone, pile on top. All the things we used to do to slow the play the ball down, which were much safer and much easier and easier to enforce than all the rubbish we go through now. Then players got skin-tight jerseys. You couldn't grab hold of them. You had no leverage on them. And you had to grab elbows, and you had to grab necks, and you had to grab shoulders to get leverage on them. It's a whole minefield of action and reaction. So what's happened now with the tackling technique, particularly around the middle of the field when big blokes are running the ball, is 2 men in, tackle him, catch him, hold him up, third man in around the legs to pull his legs together so he can't march forward, all right? And then you've virtually got control of him, because once you've got your legs together and 2 blokes are going up top, you can take him anywhere you want.
Yeah.
You can roll him and slow him down as much as you want. And then if you time it and you know the held call is coming, then you fall to the ground.
So that buys you an extra couple of seconds.
Buys you an extra couple of seconds. You multiply that by 300 play the balls in a game. It's massive, And these are in the middle of the ruck where they're setting up plays and getting ready for big plays. And so your priority is when you make the tackle, first you want to stop the bloke, then you want to stop him unloading the ball so someone doesn't have to finish off your work. Then you want to get him to the ground. But then what we've seen is you'll see a lot of the players now when they come in, so that you can't get their legs together, what do? They spread their legs. Or they spin their back and they back into tackles because they're stronger. And they can actually see you coming and they can move their legs. You watch them, how many people
Who spreads their legs? The ball carrier.
The ball carrier. They get very, very adept at not allowing their legs to be pinned together by a third man in underneath, which means you've got to come with more force. Now, in the early stages of the third man in around the legs, that's where the cannonball thing, because they also realised it was a place where you could cause them a bit of damage.
Was this cannonball thing, was this a byproduct of what's happened, or was this taught? Was cannonball taught?
The cannonball was a byproduct. I think that's players taking matters into their own hands.
Right.
Yeah, and I think even the coaches then realised, no, that's gone too far.
What about the hip drop?
The hip drop, I don't know. I'm not close enough to that part of it to understand whether the hip drop was an intentional thing or it's an unintentional part of the thing. So what's happening is you've got 2 men holding a player up. You're coming in and you can't hit him around the legs, so I'll hit him around the waist. But if I'm behind him Now the only way I can stop him moving forward is to drag on him, and to do that I've got to pull my whole weight. I don't think they intentionally meant to drop their hips on top of the legs of the player underneath. I just think it was part of the process of the ball carrier being stronger and better at keeping his legs apart and not allowing you to pull his legs together to be dominated in the tackle, or they'll turn their back or what have you. But in this instance here, where two players are obviously struggling with another player who's still marching forward and might be a chance of getting his hand over the top and getting a release, you've got to get him down quickly. So rather than cannonball at his legs, which is now illegal, and you can't go in at the lower part of the leg.
Well, we thought it was illegal. There was one in the Canberra game with Tarpany.
Yeah.
No, was it? I don't even think it was penalised, was it?
No.
And Tarpany went to the bin because he thought some bloke was trying to break his leg.
Yeah, don't bring logic into it, mate, please. If we start talking logic, everyone will turn off. There's no logic in rugby league.
So
what they did was they have these ones where you've come from behind, you're trying not to cannonball, you're trying to bring them down, so you've got to go in around their hips, but you can't actually get a shot on him because your mates are there, so they'll grab a hold of the waist from behind or the shorts from behind, and then they want to drag them down from there, and sometimes you lose your balance and you pull over the top. I don't think hip drop, I might be wrong, there might be some judo instructor or wrestling instructor out there that told someone to do it at some stage. But I think hip drop is just an unfortunate part of this constant battle to handle the big, strong players in our game, or the players in our game, or when tackles are not going the way they should do, to get them down and control the tackle. It's all about the speed of the play of the ball. That's what it is.
Take the spear tackle out of it, Gus. How dangerous are these two tackles we've been talking about in terms of tackles you've seen in the game?
The first time I ever saw one, I could see the cannonball happening. The first time I ever saw it, the third man in around the legs, right? So traditionally you run, you're fighting for every inch, third man around the legs. Now you've got no control. They can just put you wherever they like. So I could see that was an opportunity for players to really come in and cause some damage. And I think players took that into their own being, to be honest. And there weren't many of them, but some did. They ran in with a lot of force, and I could see that happening. I could see that being a byproduct. What Bill Harrigan said was, it's not against the rules. I said, no, but it's against the spirit, and it's going to lead to injury, right? This third man in around the legs. And then to counter that, well, once they have that for a season, they go away in the summer and they work out, what do we do about that? Turn your back and spread your legs. Then they can't get in at your legs. You know, you've got control where they hit you. Now they're coming in at your knees. They're not coming in at the back of your legs. You know, they're not coming in at the side of your legs. And you see some of the big, tall blokes in the game, the forwards, they're really good at not being put on the ground, even though they're attended to by three defenders, because they're big and strong, and then they start to back into tackles. What happened with backing into tackles? Crusher tackles. Because once you started to back into tackles, that's how we've got to get him down on the ground. Then he'd just fold up and you'd get caught on top, and then you'd have crusher tackles. So it just keeps following.
It's a cycle.
It's a cycle, and it's been happening for decades. And it's all about the first coach that decided that speed of the play of the ball was the thing, and that he would cheat, you know, because of gang tackling and slowing the play of the ball down, all the old methods that used to be done. The coach decided, well, run up and don't voluntary tackle, run up and dive at their feet, right? And referees allowed it. And then referees wouldn't allow you to flop on them. And then how do we stop them from playing the ball quickly and voluntary tackle? You've got to hold them up. Tackling became about not putting them down, but about holding them up, not letting them get to the ground where they can start their play of the ball.
So what you say, you don't tackle now, you catch. Is that what they say?
A lot of it's catch, yeah. A lot of it's catch, yeah. It's catch, yeah. It's just, I don't know if that's the right terminology.
Look, we need to get into these questions, but I'm wondering, like the shoulder charge has gone out of the game, and like we've seen a few, like Finucane came out of the line and tried to put a shot on and gets suspended for 2 weeks
for a head.
If we allowed that physicality, if we were a bit more lenient with the physicality, would there be more reward for solid tackling, and we might see less of this?
Oh, it's a difficult question, mate. Because
what I mean is, if you try to defend in the old school manner, you're more likely to get yourself in trouble, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, they don't know what they're eradicating, and they don't know what they're creating. That's what I keep saying. And every time they change a rule, I keep saying it's like a dog chasing its tail. They're making rules to make up for the last rule that didn't get the right result, or they worked around that and did something else. And coaches and wrestling coaches and tackle technique people are working. You know, there's not as much direct shoulder hit in the game anymore. Maybe more out on the edges, all right, but certainly with big blokes in the middle of the field running the ball hard. And they're big men now.
Yeah,
We've got big blokes playing at 120, 125 kilos. That was unheard of 30 years ago.
There's not an ounce of fat on them either.
Yeah, your big men weren't that big. You know, they were big by those days, but they weren't like these blokes.
Like Brucey Clark big.
Brucey Clark. No, Brucey Clark was big the other way.
All right.
He had a big heart.
Very quickly. Joey reckons that when you get those two blokes that lock up, you've heard what he said, when the two up top that stop the momentum, there should be no third man in and the referee should say held.
But you can't stop them. Look, if you only got the two up there with some of them, you can't stop them moving. You can't stop the player moving. He will keep making ground. And he will pull out of it or he'll flop to the ground, he'll do something with it. Sometimes two just isn't enough to make the tackle. And if you start saying, well, the two blokes have got hold of him, that's the end of the tackle, then what happens to the great offloaders in our game? Sometimes, we're getting more and more of this, late call offload, held, and then the ball comes out the thing. Yeah. When, with some players, they're just getting warmed up at that stage of the tackle to get the ball offloaded. Yeah. It's really hard. You see a lot of coaches and they're trying to say to their players, put them on the ground, don't let them stand in the tackle. But the big men have got really good at standing in the tackle. They've got really big at avoiding the cannonball or the third man around the legs. They spread their legs, they back into the tackle. Now you've got to be really careful if they back into the tackle. You don't want to give a penalty away and get suspended for a crusher tackle. Even though you haven't got control of it, he's done it to you. He's turned his back to get better leverage, to spread his legs, to stop the third man coming in, to stop being put on the ground so that it's not an 8-second play of the ball, it's a 3-second play of the ball, to give his time, to play the ball properly. So it's all... I can't fit it all in.
Well, when you're watching the game at the weekend, have a listen to what Gus has just said. You'll watch it very differently in terms of the way players attack.
I can't fit the whole explanation of the history into a podcast of this length. But I've lived through it all and I've seen all the changes and I know who influenced what and why they influenced it what. And no one was ever influencing it for the best interest of the game. It was for the best interest of their team or themselves. And the interpretations just got beyond ridiculous. I don't know how the players and the coaches cope. I really don't. They do a great job to do what they're doing. But you come out to a training session one day. I'll invite you out during the summer when they go into the Wrestle Dome and they practice their tackle technique and what they do to each other.
You're a Wrestle Dome?
It's frightening. It's well, everyone goes to a Wrestle Dome. We've got one at the Bulldogs. We've built one there. So, wow. But it's frightening. It's absolutely frightening, the contact and what they do to each other and how they it's, and people don't get that. You're sitting a long way in the grandstand, you're not hearing the impact, you're not feeling it. And it's where a lot of the fatigue comes from.
Why don't you video it? You should put it up on social media.
I've got plenty of videos of it. How many do you want?
I did my weight session this morning. I'll be sweet.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right.
3 sets of bench presses.
And when they get hold of you, you feel like you're in a coffin. Like you feel like you're never going. You feel like you're in a straitjacket. You can't get out of it.
What have you put? You've been the guinea pig.
It sucks your breathing in.
Have you let them have a go at you? Have you jumped in? You jumped in the Wrestle Dome?
Not for a while.
Oh, man, there'd be a few blokes love to get hold of you in the Wrestle Dome.
Not for a while. Well, be careful what you wish for.
Okay.
They might catch an old-fashioned elbow right on the chin.
You get 6 weeks.
I knocked Freddie out one day when he was young.
Did you?
Yeah.
What? Oh, we'll start our Ask Gus with that. Let's take a little break. We'll get the Freddie story and then we'll get into these questions. 6 tackles with Gus, the Ask Gus special. I've half brushed the Ask Gus the last few weeks. We have too much to talk about. How'd you knock Freddie out?
Oh, it's an old. Haven't you heard that story?
Maybe.
He was young. He was a young teenager. He was a smart ass as a kid, Freddie, And I was doing coaching, and I'd only just finished playing, so I used to get him with him and train with him and play with him. And I'm trying to teach these forwards this little play, this little 3-on-2 play, this little 3-on-2 play, and I've got some defence lined out there. And in those days, we didn't do practice on ourselves. We practiced on tackle bags, and we didn't have tackling each other at training. You just didn't do it back in the 70s and 80s. We practiced on tackle bags and punching bags and all that sort of thing. So I said, give me 3 defenders out there, and I'm trying to show the forwards how to do this play. I think it was Cartwright and Geyer and Paul Clark or someone. I'm trying to explain how you got to give me time to get this and that. And if you give me enough time, I'll draw him in and we'll get a pass away. Sort of old-fashioned.
Because MG's eyes rolling in his head.
3-on-2. He's already gone to sleep. He's making fun of me behind and all that sort of thing. So Brad Fittler's standing on a third defender, and I always had pretty good instinct. So the ball's sort of on its way, and I can see him coming from a mile away. He's not going to do what I told him to do. He's going to come in and crash tackle me and make fun of me and that sort of thing. So as he's got me, I've gone bang, an elbow, and I got him flush on the chin. and his eyes rolled back in his head, and down he went, bang. And I thought, my God, I've killed him. That might have been the end of a very promising career.
Oh,
But he never did it again.
oh,
They never rushed in again. That was the old days.
Could you imagine Craig Bellamy knocking out Cameron Munster in training?
Well, back
there
in
goes 10th of his salary cap.
Back in the 70s, it was one of the things about being a ball player. So if you want to be a good ball player in first grade, you've got to be able to turn off your light switch with your elbows.
I love it. Hey, that's a great segue. At MJ Whitty, Gus, you won a comp in your first year as a first grade coach. People say it's hard coaching teammates. Did you find it difficult?
Did I find it difficult to be
coaching your old teammates?
No, not really. Mine was a bit different because we'd all played together under Warren Ryan, who was a great coach and a great influence on all of us. And we'd had success. We won the comp in 84, 85. They went to a grand final in 86. I played with South. So I come back and coached reserve grade in 87. And then Warren left and I coached first grade in 88. But we'd pretty much all been together for a period of time. And it was just like the teacher had left the classroom. Warren had gone, but we just went on doing what we were doing.
What do they say is hard about coaching your old teammates? They don't take you seriously because you're an old muck around with your teammates?
We sort of never had that. I guess the test with everything, and anything in professional football, they say, I get kids ask, what's the hardest thing about being an NRL footballer or making us an NRL footballer? And they think you're going to say, the training or the tackling or the big blokes and how hard it is and all that. And I say, the hardest thing about being a professional footballer is the ability to say no. And that's the hardest thing sometimes about being a coach, is the ability to say no, this is the way we're going to do it.
Right.
No, you're not playing this week. No, whatever it is. And it's the same with young blokes coming through. I said the hardest part that you're going to have from transitioning from your junior football and your school football and all your mates you used to have coming into our environment and taking up a professional career, the hardest thing you're going to face is saying no to your mates.
Going to the pub on Friday.
Saying no to drink, saying no to drugs, saying no to the parties. And, we don't get Easters and we don't get to go to everyone's 21st. We don't get to go to weddings. We don't get to go to family functions because we're playing football.
Yeah.
We get up and train Christmas Day. There are a lot of things they sacrifice, and your mates will take it one or two ways. Either that you're a big head and you don't want to be with them anymore, you think you're too good for them, or no, mate, we're really cheering for you and want to have a great career. But how many are like that? So the ability to say no to your mates or say no to your family, and it's the same with coaching. Sometimes the ability to say no is the hardest part of the gig, and it's even what do you listen to, even to who That's a long story. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a wonderful experience.
Did you, even now in your current role, that's a message you'd have to relay quite regularly, isn't it? The whole say no thing, like when you sign a young player.
There's a lot of messages.
you got
to deliver. But that's the first talk that all our junior academy blokes get every year when they come in, and was for a decade out of Penrith. It's the first thing I say. It's the hardest part about being a professional footballer. When they come into our academy, this is about a 3-year program or a 3 or 4 year journey, learning what a professional footballer is before you even get the chance to play it. And I give them the reality of being an NRL player and the small percentage that actually make it, then the smaller percentage that actually make a living out of it, and then the very minute percentage, in fact none, that can retire from the game and be set up for the rest of their lives. They'll never have to work again. They've all got to work. Right? The greatest players that ever played the game have still got to go and work. They've got another 50 or 60 years to live. So, but certainly with the kids coming through, what I say to them is the hardest thing, saying no. They're the battles that you're going to have. There'll be that many temptations, and by then they're leaving school and they're getting a car and they're getting a girlfriend and a partner or whatever, and then they're going to have all the alcohol and all the drugs and all the other temptations that go on. Their mates are going to live a lifestyle that looks like it's fun and social and everyone's out and come on, be with us, and you can't.
Yep.
You can't. And sometimes that means you've got to find new friends. That's just how it works.
Danny G, what's your favourite ground?
My favourite ground?
What a good question.
My favourite ground? You kind of... it's funny how... Because I had 3 or 4 clubs as a player, and your home ground is always your favourite ground, and there are some grounds I hated to go to and play at. I hated to go to Redfern Oval.
Oh, yeah.
I hated to go to Belmore Oval to play against, Bulldogs or South Sydney. But when I played with them, loved it.
Yeah.
It was, it took on a whole different meaning. The old suburban grounds are great. I mean, as a kid, I went to Jubilee to watch the Dragons play, whenever I could.
What was it like playing at Lidcombe?
Lidcombe with the big bike track around the outside of it. Well, you sort of didn't think of Lidcombe. You were worried about the West Magpies because they were pretty rough and brutal.
Well,
back in
the
those
crowd
days.
would be a bit the same, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but Lidcombe Oval was like that's what football grounds were in those days. They were just suburban parks with a fence around it. Some had a fence around it, some didn't. If they had a fence around it, that's where we played football.
Yeah.
But it's favourite ground. I love the history of the SCG and not only the old SCG but what it's become. I love the big stadium football. Jubilee, I love Penrith Park. So much of my life been spent at Penrith Park, and particularly when I walked in what it looked like back in the sort of 70s when it was just a big park in the middle of nowhere with an old picket fence around it, and then looking at what it does today and what it provides for the community.
You're not going to answer this, are you?
Belmore Oval. Well, how can you have a favourite park? My favourite ground, Sydney Cricket Ground.
Okay, good.
That way,
everyone's happy.
it's neutral.
Hey, I'm having a tour. You should come tomorrow if you've got time. I'm having a tour through the new SFS.
All right. What? Oh, the new FS.
Yeah,
SFS.
the new
what
one.
time?
4:30.
I've got
to call the game next door.
I don't think
Maybe.
it'll be any good at 4:30.
I can't wait to have a look through there. They reckon it's.
I've got a celebration luncheon at lunchtime tomorrow.
Have you?
Yeah.
We got a lot of journalists listening to this. There's going to be cameras everywhere now.
Well, we've had a good week signing a few players. And
Oh,
we're just gonna go and have a little bit of a lunch.
yeah. Oh, it's signing, all right.
We've got a few little announcements to come.
Yeah. You're supposed to happen on Monday.
What was that?
I thought you were going to sign your coach on Monday. They were saying.
Who was saying?
Everyone.
Why do you listen to all these people?
At B Steel. Oh, this is a good. Can you remember your funniest moment on air?
My funniest moment.
Gee, there's been a few.
There's been a few. Some really, particularly around when you're around Fatty. And
He's still in great form.
One of the funniest moments I had on air was on what was the show we used to do, the Sunday Roast.
Yeah.
We had Andrew Voss and we had Matt Johns and we had Mark Geyer.
And you.
And me. And I think it's still on YouTube. Mark Geyer told a story about getting up in the middle of the night and it just escalated. I had to walk off the set. I walked off the set twice. I was so funny.
Was it not for publication?
It's on YouTube.
Oh, right.
You can go and watch it. There's some funny moments. And some of the things that could have happened with Matty Johns on Sunday mornings.
He's still a bit under the weather.
He'd still be a little bit under the weather. You would not know. I'd have to cut him off because I knew what the ending of the joke was. He'd start to tell a joke and I'd have to cut him off. And Mark Geyer come up with this thing. And I walked off the set. I couldn't stop laughing at him. And he always made me laugh. He always made me laugh. He was a liar and a con man and a joke teller, and he was mischievous, and he loved Mark Geyer.
MJ was a con man.
Oh yeah. The problem was he ran into a con man, so.
Yeah.
But the one of the first, I think I've told this story before. One of the first commentary games I ever did. When they first brought me into Channel 9, I'd actually sit behind Fatty and Sterlo in the box, and Ray Warren was the commentator, and they got me in for a final series. And I think I've told this story about Ricky Stewart was having a great day and a wonderful day, and he put this kick into the in goal and forced a line dropout. And I sort of chimed in, and what I wanted to say, he had the ball on a string, or he had the game by the throat, and what came out was he had the game by the balls. And I thought, well, that'll be my last commentary moment. Nipped in the bud.
Were you there the night when Fatty called it the Wollongong Ocean?
Yeah.
That's the best. I still call it the Wollongong Ocean.
Wollongong Ocean. Yeah. There's a lot of.
He's so funny.
There's a lot of things that have come off our. Remember when Friday night football used to kick off at 7:30 at the ground, but it wouldn't come on air till 8:30 at night. So we're on an hour delay. Yeah. So when the game had finished, there was still an hour of coverage to go, and we'd have to go over and record. The final part of it, and what's on this week and what games are on and what our coverage is this week and what do you think of the game, that sort of thing. And Fatty and I had to go over and record the finish to the program. We nearly had to go live to do it.
Because he just couldn't get it right.
Because I couldn't stop laughing for an hour and he kept stuffing up. And And then he'd crack a joke or he'd do something. And in the end, it was getting so close that we weren't going to be able to pre-record it. We nearly had to go live. And if we went live, God knows what would have happened. It was just hilarious.
There's
so
a
many
great
funny
one.
moments about him.
There's some great stuff on YouTube of Sterlo and him, like the bloopers trying to record the openers to the coverage. They have about 97 takes.
Fatty always made me. There were three blokes that I couldn't look at without laughing. One was Paul Vorton, one was Mark Dwyer, and one was who was the bloke used to do the accent. I can't think of his name. Anyway, move on.
Greg Ritchie. Yeah.
Mahatma Coat. Yeah.
Mahatma wouldn't make it to air these days.
No.
I had a good one here. Yes. Geez, they're weird, these handles. Real DZ? I don't know. Gus, do you believe in rest or momentum coming into the finals?
Well, case by case. Mm-hmm. Case by case. Sometimes you don't get the chance to rest because you're walking the tightrope. He's
talking about Cleary and Luai.
I think it's good for him. Well, it's not good for him. It's not ideal, But the problem is, and I went through this myself, years and years ago. They're 8 points in front in the minor premiership. All you're doing over the last 4 or 5 weeks is just hoping no one gets hurt.
Yeah.
So when I look at it and I say, well, Cleary's suspension, he's not hurt, he's fine. Luai, leg, he'll be fine. They're both back for the first week of the semis. I don't have to worry about those two getting hurt for the next 5 weeks. I now know that they're in game one of the semi-finals. Mm-hmm. What I don't know, everyone else has got to get there. They've got to avoid suspension or avoid injury, and you're sort of walking a tight. But it tends to work out. If you're well conditioned and you're that good, they tend not to get injuries at that stage of the year, or they can play with injuries. But you've got to look at this as a positive. You can't change what's happened to Cleary. You can't change what's happened to Luai. But what does it mean? Both players will be available for the first round of the finals. They've played a heap of football together. They're fit young men. They're in the prime of their career. They're the representative class halves. They've won a premiership already. They've been to 2 grand finals. Nothing they do in the next month is going to make any difference for that first round of the finals. They know what they have to do, and they're there. So the coach can sit there and say, well, I know I've got my halves there. Now I've just got to get the rest of them through it. There are others that have come through a tough Origin series, but they've managed to get a break in. They gave them all of a break. Fellas like Fisher Harris and Yo are vital. Kickout's vital. Moses Leota is vital. And the blokes like Brian To'o and Crichton. Well, Crichton's just had a couple of weeks off now. Maybe he's got his break by other means. And, they've got some young fellas there in Tungor and May who are having a big year, and maybe they just need a week off or two. And you want to make sure that your reserve talent is getting a taste of first grade too. What you don't want to do is get to the grand final or the preliminary final, and suddenly you've got 4 injuries, and you turn around to get your replacements, and they haven't played first grade for 10 weeks. That's the last thing you want. So you've got to sort of blend them in, and it's a managing act. But when you've been through it a few times, you get used to it. And
if they win 2 of their last 5, they've got the minor premiership wrapped up, right? So I saw our mates with Bluebet open Penrith up at $1.80 against Canberra this week. I mean, fair dinkum. They will win.
$1.80.
Yeah, they're not now. I think they've got a clash against the Warriors in there too. So, look, if they win 2 of their last 5, then he has the luxury of resting wherever he wants on a rotational basis.
Well, he's not going to finish outside the top 2.
No. But, I mean, he wants to win the minor premiership, obviously.
Well,
but, I mean,
is it that big a deal?
Well, I don't know. I suppose the fans probably.
But they'll win 3 or 4 of their 5. They might win all 5.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't keep looking at their team. I'm saying the other fellas will lift. I know you just know what they're like. They'll just lift. They're so much better than the other teams. It's not funny at the moment.
We'll have a look at the round after we have a look at these questions. These are good. SB, good question. Why do so many teams have issues with edge defence, especially with decision making? The same teams make the same mistakes every week.
Yeah, that's the way it looks when you're sitting in the grandstand or you're watching on TV, and go out and stand there and watch just how fast they are, how big they are, how quickly they do it, how well they run their lines. When you're playing the good sides that execute so well, it's so difficult. It's so difficult to keep your coordination and keep, you can practice it as many times as you like, but the good players are so good and the good teams are so good, and the way they run their plays, it's so fast. I don't think people really get a feel for it. I've said this in any era. I'd love sometimes to grab just a fan and stand him somewhere near the action on the field at close quarters and actually feel what it's like. Feel the actual speed of the game. Feel the impact and feel the the split-second decisions that need to be made. These blokes are elite. It's just not. This is not a video game where you can move your defender wherever you want. It's not like that at all. And when you watch on TV and when you watch even from the grandstand, you're in a different frame of reference. You're a long way away from the action, so it looks slower.
Oh, yeah.
All
When
right.
you're down on the sideline, you see him belting.
It's different the
living
closer
crap
you
out
are
of
to
it,
the
too.
action. And if you actually go out there and stand there, I mean, I could stand you in the in goal behind it and say, well, this is what they're going to do. He's going to run a decoy. He's going to throw it out the back to him, and they're going to come down the outside, defend it, and watch what happens. Because they're so good at what they're doing. And it happens so quickly. And that's why time spent playing together and combinations and communication are important. And sometimes they can't defend it the same way twice because they don't run it the same way twice. They run it from a different point, or they run it on a different angle, or the sleight of hand. And then if you rush up too quick, they grab a kick behind, or they throw the long pass, or they throw the short pass, or they dummy, or they've got so many options with it that sometimes you're out thinking yourself before it's done, and the play just happens. It's unbelievably intimidating to be right up close to it.
So you're being too harsh is what your answer to the
You're
question
being
is.
way too harsh. Now, sometimes defenders make stupid decisions. They make panic decisions. You go back and watch the majority of tries scored in the NRL, and I say this, 80 or 90% of them could have been saved if someone just didn't panic or someone didn't make a rash decision. But that's what the attackers made you do sometimes. It's not even the best players in the game do it. The best players in the game do it. That's just the nature of the beast. But they're very, very good at what they do, and they practice it hard. And it's not easy. I think you're being hard. There are some that need work, but that comes with experience, and no one gets them all right. Tell me a defender that gets everything right. They just don't.
Cam Day. I know, Cam. Good to hear from you, Cam. Now, I don't know. If you can't answer this in a concise manner, tell me and we'll brush it. But I've been wanting to investigate this a bit myself. How does the salary cap work, particularly in relation to loaning out players over the next few months? How does that assist with the 2023 salary cap?
Okay, so what happens is, let's say you've loaned a player to. We'll take the Josh Adokar example, okay? Let's say Melbourne Storm requested Josh Adokar. Let's say I had said yes. The process would have been this. We terminate Josh Adokar's contract now, and we sign a contract from November onwards next year. All right, he goes and signs a new contract with the Melbourne Storm. He plays with the Melbourne Storm, and they pay him whatever they're going to pay him during that period, which needs to be equivalent or more than what we were going to pay him during that period as well. During that period, had we let him go, I think we would have saved $160,000 in salary cap for 2022.
Yep.
All right, which means we'd be then a further $160,000 under the cap for this year. Now, how that helps with next year is that I can now prepay players next year to that value. All right, so what I can do is, if I've got Matt Thompson on $300,000 next year, if I wanted to, I could pay him. I could prepay him this year, right, and then he would only be on 140 in the cap next year. So whatever you're under the cap this year, and they limit the amount that you can be under the cap. But if whatever you are under the cap this year, you can apply it to next year's payments to players that are on contracts, which reduces their impact on the cap in 2023. So to save money in 2022 means that you can either spend it now. I could have gone out and bought another player for the rest of the season, or I could attribute that to the 2023 payments and bring that forward, and that gives you more to spend in 2023. That's how it works.
You're telling me I would have got my $300,000 up front now?
No, you couldn't get the whole lot, but you got
quarter of it.
No, you got to be in the cap for a certain amount next year. But
bring it on. Where do I sign?
There's so many nuances around the cap and way to save money and spend money and what have you. But it's one of the things that one of the good things we got the salary cap auditor to do many years ago was to think of it as a fluid thing over years, and it's not one cut and dried year every year.
Okay.
So that if you had discounts or you had money under the cap this year you didn't spend, technically you could apply it to future years. All right, so that it gives you a little bit more scope over the course of a 3 or 4 year period when you're managing your cap, and you're managing your cap daily, and your roster changes, yearly. And you're bringing players into the top 30 and out of the top 30 and moving players to other clubs and giving players other opportunities. If you haven't got a spot for him here, you get him over there. Or now we don't need 4 centres. We need another front row. We need to move 2 of these and bring in a front row. So you're adjusting your roster the whole time. But to answer the question, that's how a saving in 22 helps you in 23, because you can apply anything you're under the cap in 22. You can apply it to next year's cap, prepay them, so that you've spent all your cap this year, and then you owe them less the following year.
That's a very valuable explanation for everyone listening, because in the Tigers' case, they've loaned David Nofaluma and Gildart, which means
big savings. That
will free up money for them to
for next year
upgrade or whatever they need to do for next year. So So you're not just you're not. I mean, we've made out that it's a bastardisation of teams at the bottom, but there is actually an advantage for them to be able to loan out players.
Yeah. So I could explain to you, with players that have been released and all that sort of thing, how much under the cap the Bulldogs are this year, under the cap. But that's a sacrifice we're making at the moment to save pennies for 2 years down the track. So as a club, they're actually performing really well. And, we've been through this a number of times with a lot of the top clubs. Some years where it's a bit of a down year for you and you're not performing as well, you save your pennies a little bit, you go around under the cap, but that helps you then recruit for the future.
All right. One more, and then I'll get into our fast round. Then we'll do our preview. Can't wait for the fast round. I feel like Tony Barber. Dean Bertzos. How do clubs like Tiger and Bulldog, he's obviously a Gus fan, go from being bad at the start of the year to looking like they could make the 8 if the season started a month ago, all with the same roster?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, no. I don't think the Broncos look bad at the start.
No, Bulldog.
Oh, Bulldog.
Tiger and Bulldog.
Well, look, one of the things about football, and I keep saying this, one of the biggest factors in football is time spent playing together, keeping your combination the same for as long as you can. Even if you're not winning, time spent playing together is going to get you improvement. When you see teams changing their halves all the time, or you see them changing the roster, changing the first grade team all the time because they're losing, and they're trying to solve the problem with selections, you know that there's a problem. You know that there's a problem. And if you're constantly changing halves, that's signs of a bigger problem. All right? I won't give you my reasoning for that, but my philosophy on coaching and halfbacks and halves and playmakers has been very, very strong. You've got to be able to pick and stick, and you've got to be able to educate them and coach them, and that's to me, if you can't coach that part of it, then you're going to struggle with the rest of it anyway. So you need to be showing us, as soon as you see teams changing halves and changing halves and changing halves, it's a sign to me that it's the beginning of the end. It's just that's just where it is. The halves are where you need to coach the hardest, and that's particularly if you've got young ones developing through. And it's I've always said there's a system to it, and there's an art to it, and that's what you need to do. But
Titans have dropped their 20-year-old halfback this week.
Yeah, well. So, as the season goes, you would hope your team is always. You hope all the teams are improving. Some improve more than others, but certainly Bulldogs. I think they've won 4 of their last 6 now, and
flying.
And Tigers are doing well too. Tigers had some good wins earlier in the year too. They've got the ability to beat anyone on their day. The Tigers, they're just plenty of talent in that club, but they just can't get it together for a reason or another. And it's not as though they were changing their halves a lot.
Hastings at 13 made a bit of a difference there, a bit of an extra attacking focal point for them.
It's one of those new parts of the game about having that focal sort of middle player. They're all talking about, Victor Radleys and Sire Yos and Jake Trebojeviches, and probably all started with James Graham many years ago, front row being a ball player in the middle of the field, which hadn't been seen for the last 20 years. And, so, having a playmaker at lock forward, you sacrifice some things, but you gain in others. And it can bring the attack to light.
All right. What do you consider a successful Broncos season for 2022?
They're already a success.
Done.
Whatever. I don't care if they don't win another game. It's been a successful year. They will win more games, and they will be there in the finals. And they
might get a second bite at the cherry in the top 4.
Well, they'll give a good account of themselves. But it's their first time for a while, and they've got some young blokes there. As I say, some of them young blokes were there when they were running last and getting a kicking every week, and they've been hardened up by all that, but they've persevered with them, which has been good. And the recruitment of a playmaker, a chief playmaker, Adam Reynolds, which has made a big difference to the club. And I've got to say too, Kurt Capewell has made a big difference to that club too.
Yep. Okay, 60 seconds. Yes or no? Oh, wow.
I've got a clock.
Yeah. Should a club approach Eddie Jones to coach it?
Yes.
I didn't expect that. Do you see the Eels finishing in the 8 despite Mitch Moses out for a month?
Yes.
What about the 4?
No.
Should the Doggies move their home ground to Belmore?
Pass.
Can the Cowboys overtake the Panthers and win the minor premiership?
No.
Bears to Perth? Question mark.
No.
Bears anywhere?
Yeah.
Was Super League ultimately good for rugby league in Australia?
No.
Have you enjoyed today's episode?
Yeah.
We beat the 60 seconds and I made one up at the end. Let's take a break and then we'll preview the round. Do you feel like you're in 60 minutes? Tonight, Phil Gould goes behind the lines. Oh, that was good fun. We should do more Ask Gus episodes. This has been great. Thanks for all your questions. Ask Gus, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. 150 questions today. Well, actually, not 150 responses. Not all of them have been questions. A few of them have been giving it to us. Roosters Broncos to start round 21 at the Gus's favourite ground, the cricket ground. Now, every game's crucial for the Roosters. Now they're in 8th. The Broncos sit in 5th as it is, and they've lost Patrick Carrigan. Gee, that's a big loss for them. No Egan Butcher, no Lindsay Collins for the Roosters, who I noticed, Gus, Ben Thomas is going to play his first game of the year off the bench. They've got Terrell May. They've also got Watson and Hutchison. So their stocks up front are a bit skinny at the moment, although I do see Fletcher Baker on an extended bench. But they are struggling for big men. And obviously, Brisbane have lost a key big man there too in Carrigan. Fascinating game.
Yeah, well, if they go with the 4 interchange players, Watson, Thomas, Hutchison and May, that's a very, it's a different looking 4 coming off the bench, which they're going to need some bench work out there. And Lodge is now starting, Keary, Manu back to the centres. The Brisbane team, they come down here and put some good ones in at the cricket ground.
They were bad last week, weren't they?
They were
Not
bad,
flat.
but that's a wake-up call.
Yep.
You can bounce out of that one really quickly, and maybe they had the Roosters on their mind. Maybe this is the one they've targeted, away from home before the finals to really make a statement about themselves. I think Broncos will be very hard to beat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at this bench for the Roosters. Gee whiz. You know what? I think if Carrigan was playing, I would tip the Broncos. Payne Haas is playing. Kobe Hetherington, he'll do his work.
You'll make all the tackles.
Capewell, Ricky, Flegler. Gee, there's some strike in that back line.
Cobbo.
There's some
Amazing.
strike in that back line.
Go on.
I'm going to go for Bronco.
Yep. Melbourne versus the Gold Coast. Down in Melbourne, Tyron Wishart's playing fullback. David Nofaluma gets a start. They got no outside backs left. With all due respect to the blokes that are there, Murray and Seve and Green Anderson are the centres. Dini Rami is the other winger. They do have Xavier Coates in number 20, and he may come in. Does it matter?
Yeah, I think Xavier Coates would make a difference.
Does it matter, though, who lines
They
up for
might have had
Melbourne?
to name your number 20 because they didn't have 20 names or 22 names to put in.
Brimson and Boyd are the halves for the Titans, and Jaden Campbell's gone back to fullback, so they're going to have some points.
Yeah, I'm glad Campbell's playing fullback. I think that's his spot, and I think he's dangerous. Oh, look, if Storm were playing anyone else, they'd probably be vulnerable. I can't see the Titans beating them at the moment, the way they're playing.
We head to Brookie again for Friday night footy. The 5 of the 7 are back, up against Para. Oh, this is the time-honoured clash, this one, isn't it, Gussie?
Mm-hmm.
What can I tell you? Ben Trebojevic in. Tuipulotu, Olu Kawatu, Saab. Schuster's named 18th man. Surely he'll play. Sipley and Kohler have all been named in the extended score, but there's no Mitch Moses. Jake Arthur has got the number 7 jumper.
Yeah, it'll be a big test for both these teams. Firstly for Manly, bringing those players back in that stood down last week, and whatever disharmony that has caused or dissension, but we don't know. We're not on the inside, and that's a man management job for Des Hasler, and there's no one better to handle that. Their performance without all those players was quite meritorious, actually. Yeah. They were very, very good.
Moses.
And then the Eels. I mean, the Eels in the first half last week wiped the floor with the Panthers. Just ran roughshod through them. Didn't matter. I don't think it mattered that Cleary got sent off at all. I think they just. And then in the second half, were beaten by 12 men.
Yeah.
Panthers without Cleary. So how do you know what's going to happen?
Cam said in the commentary. Sorry, he said that he said. He couldn't understand that performance from Parra in the second half, that they went into their shell. They didn't play any football. He said that if it was him, he would have just said, right, let's go for the jugular and try and absolutely belt these blokes off the park. He said he was stunned by the lack of killer instinct in that Parramatta performance in the second half.
Absolutely, but we get that week to week. We get it half to a half. You know, like they've been beaten by some average sides this year, sides down the bottom of the ladder. They've had some horrific losses. But then will bounce out and they've beaten the Panthers twice this year in 5-star performances. So the big test for Parramatta is, can they do that? Mitchell Moses not playing this week, which I think is a loss. Can they bounce off that last week? And was the second half just throttling down and we've got these fellas beaten and they can't beat us and we'll protect ourselves? And for Manly, it's, can they pull it all together after the horrendous week they had last week? Having said all that, the spirit with which they played was tremendous against the Roosters. So,
gee, Jake played good, didn't he? He was almost man of the match in a team that was beaten by 10.
I'm going to back Des Hasler.
Go Manly.
I'm going Manly.
Okay, early Saturday, South Warriors. Wade Egan's playing 5'8" for the Warriors.
Yeah.
South? Yeah. Sunshine Coast Stadium.
Well, Wade Egan played plenty in the halves coming through. He played with an under-20s team at the Panthers.
Yeah, he did too.
That had Cleary and Luai and Fisher Harris and Corey Harawira-Naidoo and a lot of those players, Moses Leota and all that. They all played together. And Wade Egan was the hooker, but he would fill in a lot in the halves if the other ones weren't out there. So he's quite adept at playing in the halves. He actually threw some nice passes last week from there. Who have they got playing? They've got Freddie Lussick playing hooker. Look, the 2 points are just got to be too important to South Sydney. I'd tip South there.
Chugging along. Now, Canberra meet the Panthers.
Yep.
They're pretty much full strength now, Canberra. And they've got a bit of momentum behind them. But the only changes for the Panthers are in the halves, where O'Sullivan and Salmon are pairing up. Now, I mean, you're the coach. I can see Salmon just being there as a defensive roadblock, really, and then Yo will do a bit of the ball playing with O'Sullivan. And what do you think?
I've watched Jamin Salmon play since he was 9 years of age. I know what his talents are as a playmaker.
Yeah.
I watched him play Oztag. I watched him play rugby league. I watched him come through the junior rep program. It's been a bit up and down for him in his NRL career, but my understanding is that he's turned into a real professional. He's got his life back in order and he's got his football in order. And whilst he doesn't play this role on a weekly basis, I've got no doubt that he's got the talent to be. I liked him as a young bloke to a Wade Graham, to a right-footed Wade Graham.
Yeah.
Similar sort of player that could play back row 5'8", lock forward, what have you. He's got real smarts with the ball. He's no dummy with the ball at all. And we know that Sean O'Sullivan has got playmaking in him and a little kicking game. But just looking at the rest of the team, Edwards, May, Tagnor, Crichton, if he plays, then you've got Leota, Coruscant, Fisher Harris, Viliami Kikau.
It's their best side, really, without the two halves.
You've got Sorensen, you've got Leonard, you've got Charlie Staines.
Falls is on 21. I don't know whether he's going to make it or not this week.
I wouldn't think so. I think he's injured. Okay. I don't see anything in the extended bench that they might bring in. It just seemed having Haynes, Staines, but they're so fit. They all play 80 minutes. I think they'll outwork the Raiders. I think they'll win anyway.
Sharks Dragons, the old Southern Sydney derby. This one, Cade Dykes will make his debut, playing fullback for Cronulla. His dad, Adam Dykes, played nearly 200 games for the club, and his grandfather played for them too, which I wasn't aware of.
I played with his grandfather.
Did you?
Johnny Dykes.
Yeah, right.
Johnny Dykes, at the back of his career, came out and played with the Panthers.
Right.
He was living at Cronulla with a bloke, and our coach was a bloke called Stan Bottle, who was a mate of Jack Gibson's at the time. And Stan Bottle, they used to drive from Cronulla to Penrith. There was no freeways in those days.
It's a long way.
From Cronulla to Penrith, 3 days a week for training. And Johnny Dykes was our lock forward. And I was only very young then. I played with Johnny Dykes. He was a tremendous trainer and tough man. He was a really good player. And then, of course, Adam came along, and Cade is a tremendous footballer. Anyone who watches lower grade football will know the exploits of this fella. He's fast and elusive, and he's got great skills. He's born to be an NRL player, and he thoroughly deserves his debut this weekend. And
he must be going good if he's kept Lachlan Miller out of the team, because he flew on debut, didn't he?
Well, this is a player of the future. I think this might be the start of a pretty good career.
Yep.
Shark.
I told you I was off the Dragons a couple of weeks ago. They've been awful. Seriously.
What about last week?
Oh, my God. How bad was that? They were right in the game. Then just gone.
No, they kind of were.
Well, they at half time they were. They dragged their way back.
On the scoreboard, but they'd scored a fluky... Well, that's how they score them. They scored a fluky try near the line. Their only chance of scoring anything is Ben Hunt.
Yeah.
Then in the second half, where they had a chance, he threw a bad pass and the game was over. They just come down the other end and put 3 or 4 on them, and that was the end of that. No, Shark.
They got some... I'll just pick up on that. Like you said, their only chance of scoring was Ben Hunt. Like, you look at, they've got some good attacking footballers in this team. All right, no comment. Pass. Bulldogs, North Queensland.
I'll write a book one day.
Yeah, I know you will. Big test. Gee, Jacob Carraz is going good for you on the wing. They're all going good.
Great kid. Yep.
Here's your test though. This will be good. This will be a good game.
It's been played in Bundaberg.
Oh, is it?
2:00 on the Sunday afternoon. I went up to Bundaberg earlier in the year to watch where we're playing at a famous cricket ground in Bundaberg.
Mm-hmm.
And, Cowboys are going terrific, aren't they? Playing a great brand of football. It'll be a real test for the Bulldog defence. But the boys are enjoying their football. It's great spirit in the club at the moment. They'll give a good account of themselves.
Yeah. And then Sunday footy, Campbelltown. Tigers up against the Knights.
Tigers.
Beauty.
So, for the weekend, tipping Bronco, Storm, Sea Eagle, Rabbit, Panther, Shark, Bulldog, Tiger.
Bundaberg ginger beer. Get them to bring you back.
There's everything in Bundaberg. It's right at the bottom of the barrier reef too, isn't it? The bottom end of the barrier reef, or they call it. They've got some exotic resorts out there, out near the reef or somewhere.
Bundaberg. Oh, Bundaberg's near the water.
Yeah.
I always had this impression it was well inland.
No.
Yeah. It's nice.
Nice town.
Shame you couldn't get up there.
I am going.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, so I'll call the game Saturday night, our first Saturday night game here on
Saturday night. We've got the Saturday night game. My mistake. Sorry. So we're doing Sharks Dragons.
Yeah.
Saturday night footy starts this week. So for the rest of the regular season, you'll get to watch the Saturday nights with us as well.
So
Good stuff.
I'm calling Shark versus Dragon at the Bermuda Triangle on Saturday night. I'll be up early Sunday morning and fly to Bundaberg. And because of the unreliability of flights at the moment, I've then got to drive from Bundaberg to Brisbane after the game so that I can be short of getting a flight out of Brisbane because I've got to get back for 100% footy on Monday.
How far's the drive?
It's not bad. It's 3.5 hours. I've done it a couple of times. So, but I'll do that Sunday after the game and then get on the early flight back to Sydney so I can do 100% footy. And then the Bulldogs leave Bundaberg, go back to Brisbane and then fly over to New Zealand. Pretty tough draw for the Bulldogs. I mean, that's what happens when you're running last. You don't get the luck of the draw with the draw. But they had to play Newcastle in Newcastle last weekend. They've got to play Bundaberg in Bundaberg this weekend. And then they've got to fly direct to play Friday night. So they're playing Sunday in Bundaberg and they've got to play Friday night in Auckland.
You'll be right. You're going good.
You'll be right.
Thanks. That was good fun.
Still unfair in the draw, though, isn't it?
We'll get to that one next week.
That's what happens when you're running last.
Thanks for your company on 6 Tackles with Gus. Enjoy the footy over the weekend. 4 games coming to you between now and the finals, and we're not far away from the playoffs. We'll talk to you next week.